Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy is suspected of having killed as many as 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series that investigates the crimes that shocked the nation.
The thing everybody thought they knew wasn't the whole story.
John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now.
Devil in disguise.
Only on Peacock.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hychek. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hychek. Got a great show on tap for you tonight. We have Esteban Sarmiento on the show, Dr. Esteban Sarmiento. He's a primatologist, and he is a very interesting individual. He's appeared on a lot of great shows out there, including Monster Quest, and he has some great theories on early humans. He also has some theories on Bigfoot, so you want to hang around to hear that. That's the bottom of the hour, and I got to ask Doug, how you doing today, Mr. Hychek?
Doing good.
Are you surviving?
A lot of interesting conversations on the phone today.
Well, that is good. Interesting conversations are good.
Yeah,
I would imagine that we're gonna see maybe one day those interesting conversations come to fruition.
Yep, we're hoping.
Good.
Step by step.
That's good to hear. That is good to hear. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on these days. I don't know if you guys got nailed with a ton of snow last night. I know we did. Did you guys? Were you guys in the bullseye at all?
We got like half inch.
We got like 10 inches up here of
snow. You did? Whoa.
We did. And it was funny because I got a call this morning, and I from an individual, or my mother. Okay, let's just throw it out there. My mother calls me this morning. She lives in a rural area by Biwabik, Minnesota. If anyone knows where that is, it's kind of a rural area. She calls me up early this morning and says, "Hey, I got Bigfoot tracks in my yard."
What?
Yes. She calls me up because I was going to go plow her out because I have a plow truck, and I go, you got to go out and help mom out, that kind of thing. And she says, "Hey, I got these Bigfoot tracks in my yard, and I want you to come take a look at them." And the stride is like 10 feet apart. Each one of them are 10 feet apart. Well, I get there, and I'm thinking, oh, man, this is going to be cool looking. It turned out that she had a bunny rabbit that decided it was going to kind of jump through the yard. But she thought it was a Bigfoot track, but I could see where the little paws were and the tail where it landed. And man, I was so hoping, because I've never seen a Bigfoot track for myself, ever.
Really?
Like live in the wild. Not a one. Never seen it. Never seen hair. Nothing. I've never seen any kind of physical evidence of Bigfoot for myself.
Well, then what makes you believe?
Well, okay. I gotta go backwards here. I haven't seen a track since I've been investigating Bigfoot, because I actually saw a Bigfoot from my own eyes, and that's what made me keep going. But since then, I have not seen any physical evidence. And the Bigfoot I encountered was on a hunting expedition, and it was a chance encounter in the middle of the night in a federal campground. And it was either drawn to me because I was cooking. Something made this thing come to me. And it scared the living hell out of me. And I was sitting there by myself. I was moose hunting. And this is back when we could still moose hunt. We really can't do that anymore because they're kind of endangered right now. And so hopefully that gets righted, that whole thing. But back in those days, when you got a moose license, it had to be a party hunt. It was a party of 5. And I was the only hunter available that opening weekend to go out moose hunting. And so all my party members, they all had to work, so I went on my own. And I was at a campground by myself in what they call the whiteface area. Now, there's an infamous whiteface monster out there that everybody's always talked about, seeing the whiteface monster, which is a Bigfoot. That there's even been documentation of people running into it. Forest rangers have run into it. A lot of different people run into this monster. So here I am in the Moose Line area, right at the Whiteface Reservoir, right where all the sightings are happening. At that time, I thought to myself, Bigfoot was just whatever, a myth, tall tales. I really hadn't made up my mind at this point if Bigfoot was real. I was open-minded to it. I was not a closed-minded skeptic, but up until that point, I had not had any kind of encounters. That night changed it all. I was in the dark, around my campfire, cooking myself up some wieners, on the old stick, because I was just getting in from hunting. The sun had gone down about half hour before that, 45 minutes before that, and I was sitting on my lawn chair, and the first thing I recognized, and I smelled something. That was the thing that piqued my interest. It was the most putrid smell I've ever smelled in my life. And it made me give pause, like, what the hell is that smell? And I was assuming, because there's a lot of black bear in that area, and that, those state forests, they're just a magnet for those black bears. I thought for sure it was a black bear hanging around. Mm-hmm. And then I saw a huge silhouette in a bush. It wasn't a real thick bush. It was just enough to camouflage whatever it
back
was.
Up. A silhouette in a bush.
Well, okay. It was standing behind some wooded area. There we go. Some lightly wooded area. And
so it was a silhouette of what?
Well, I'm assuming a Bigfoot.
Well, I know, but what did it look like?
Well, it was actually my
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. Well, no, I saw it. But my Bigfoot, I'm not done with the story, Doug.
I don't care.
So I first see the silhouette. Okay, my Bigfoot was black fur.
Okay.
It wasn't the chestnut brown. It wasn't all that stuff that everyone says it is, or mine anyway. Mine was all black, like almost jet black hair.
Okay.
And it was really hairy. I would say about 10 feet tall.
Was it looking at you?
It was definitely looking at me. It wanted whatever I had in my camp.
Was it big, tall? I mean, you said
it was about as wide as a double door refrigerator.
Oh, it was
one of the French doors refrigerators, and it was about 10 feet tall. It was a large animal, and it gave me.
So, did it leave? It left.
After about 30 seconds, it did.
So you looked at it for 30 seconds. As big as a refrigerator, 10 foot tall.
Yes.
And
it scared the hell out of me. So I retreated with my rifle into my truck.
Oh, okay.
And stayed there the whole night.
Oh, okay.
Out of fear, because I was not sure what the hell that thing was.
No, and you still don't know.
I still don't know exactly.
10-foot silhouette. What I saw. Oh, in the future, when you tell this story, Joel, you need to say it was a 10-foot silhouette in a bush.
Yes. Well, that I know what I saw and I know what I experienced, but yes, it was a 10-foot silhouette in a bush. I did get a good look at it. It was the jet black creature.
What time of day was it?
That was nighttime. It was 7:30 at night.
Full moon type lighting?
No. It was just one of those sliver moons. Not much was there. The only thing that was really illuminating it was my fire.
Okay.
So I didn't have a lot of ambient ambient light to work with. But
sometimes in the winter the snow. The snow lightens up.
Yeah, this is fall time. This is late fall before we had the snow come in.
So there was no snow. Okay.
No snow at all. No nothing. Just me and my thoughts. And the campground was closed at this point. and you could camp there for free between so many months before the winter time. Mainly because, you know, they're not charging at that point. And that's why I chose there to stay, because I was alone.
How do you know it wasn't a moose butt?
I know moose. I know moose very, very well. And that was not a moose ass. I can tell you that much. Unless it makes noise. Unless it makes noise. And then maybe it would be.
Did it make noise too?
It made very small noises, growling noises, like more like a labored breath.
Okay,
noise.
I've heard that before.
And that was mainly what it was. It wasn't. When we're talking about infrasound last night,
yeah.
I know what that feels like, because I felt very anxious.
Really?
Very scared, and I need to get the hell out of there.
Well, it's because you saw a big 10-foot silhouette in a bush.
Well, yeah, that too. But I felt. See, I should have shot it.
Yeah.
I had a great big rifle with me that would have leveled anything.
What'd you have? What were you armed with? 30.
I was 45-70, a buffalo rifle.
Ooh.
That would have rolled it.
Yeah.
That would have put it right down. Plus his close range, it would have punched a hole ball the size of a bowling ball through it.
Yeah. That's interesting. And you never told me that.
I know, but I kind of kicked myself for not shooting.
You've never told me that.
Yeah. I thought I did tell you that, what had happened to me. I could have swore I did.
No.
And
nope.
That was, that was 2006 that happened to me. And then, of course, I got my wits about me and I started talking to people. And that's how I ended up meeting Abe Del Rio, because I reached out to their group and I explained what I'd seen and was kind of curious if that area was a hot spot or something, or maybe I was misidentifying something. And of course, they took my report and they're very nice about it. And they explained that, you're not the first one to have these feelings or hear this or see this. It's quite common, the normal stuff. And then, of course, it got me more interested to find out more about it. And so I started hitting the field to look for evidence of it. Because I was already a ghost investigator. I've done that quite a bit, which is, a whole nother thing. But I also understood how investigations work doing that. We need that, all the evidence we can log, the better. And that's what I've been trying to do ever since. But it was a very scary moment. So when these people talk about being afraid, I know what that's like. I mean, I should have shot it. Everybody tells me that. When I talked to them about that story, they said, why don't you just shoot it? You had the rifle in your hand. Because I was cleaning my gun. From that day, I was actually cleaning the gun because the reason why I was cleaning is because I didn't shoot about condensation at night. Because it was getting cold at night. And so what I'll do is oil down the gun because I didn't want to rust. And sometimes I'll rust when the condensation hits.
That's a ton of sightings that I get are from deer hunters that I hear about. A lot of people on their deer.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like you could just fool one of these things by going up on a deer stand. But hunters, everybody goes, well, why don't they shoot it? Well, I mean, you can give them a million reasons why a hunter would never shoot an upright creature.
Well, yeah, it could be a man.
Could be. Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? A person.
Nobody's going to take a chance.
And really, quite honestly, do we have a right to shoot one? I don't think we do.
The best hunting sighting I ever heard about was when a guy got yanked out of his tree stand.
What?
Imagine that.
Oh, come on, Doug. You got to tell us this story.
Tree stand. Yep.
So this guy's sitting there hunting.
Plus he was injured afterwards. And then claims that he woke up. I mean, the guy had broken his back. And he woke up and he was near a campsite.
That's wow. So he came to.
Yep.
And he's by this campsite. And he's in a deer stand. Let me paint this picture here.
Okay.
There's this guy that's hunting, okay? And he's got a rifle. Yep. And he's in a deer stand.
Yes.
And this Bigfoot comes along.
Well,
and
something.
yanks him right on the deer stand, like right by the leg, like just
Yeah, by the leg.
reaches right up and pulls him out.
Yep.
What did the Bigfoot do with him once he yanked him on the tree
No,
stand?
I mean he was literally had broken his spine.
Oh my good Lord!
He woke up a quarter mile away at a campsite.
God, that guy's lucky to be here.
See,
And
that's-
he got it. Yeah, go
That's
ahead.
way worse than a silhouette in a bush.
That is way worse. I am happy that I did not come to blows with whatever, because I would have lost
Yeah.
anyway. If it was a physical altercation, I would have been out muscled immediately. But, you know, I don't know, that good shot on him close range. I mean, that's the question I get a lot throughout the years is if deer hunters and hunters have seen him, they're already armed. Why are they just shooting them? I mean, why not? Once they identify it's a Bigfoot,
Yeah.
why do they not take the shot?
Because that's not what they're hunting.
No. Yeah, because they're not going to be eating a Bigfoot.
If you're going moose hunting, you're looking for moose.
Hmm.
You see a deer, you don't shoot it. You see a Bigfoot,
Well-
you don't shoot it.
Plus, you have to get past the whole awe factor. Like,
Yeah.
what am I seeing?
Well, sure, because it could be a man in a suit.
Mm-hmm.
Even yours
That
been a man in a suit.
Then a mythical creature comes by, you know, a legend mythical creature comes by, right? That because a lot of the population thinks, oh, what, you know, mythical creature, and they see this thing for their own eyes for the first time. They almost have to probably process it into their own reality for a minute of what they're actually seeing, because now it's changing everything, you know, that they were thinking. That is interesting.
Yeah, it is. You know, one of the first things you do when you see something, whether it's a silhouette or whether you see, you know, actual fur and fingers, is your brain starts going, what am I looking at? I remember the first time I saw a clear one at the side of a road at night. I was with Yvette, and we're driving south on 169 in Minnesota here, near Mille Lacs Lake, and we see this thing standing at the side of the road, but it's moving. It's like waving its arms right to left, extended, kind of in a hula motion. And through my mind, you know, I'm driving because I want to make sure I'm safe. And I'm seeing this thing and I'm thinking, deer. Then you're like, oh my God, it's way bigger than a deer. Elk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's bigger than an elk. Moose. You know, moose butt.
Yeah.
But then you're looking at that, well, maybe it's the antlers of the moose, you know, going back and forth. And then you see the fingers. And you see the hair hanging down the arms.
Mm-hmm.
It had its back turned to us. But then by the time you realize what you're looking at, you're past it.
Yeah.
And then you notice headlights.
My favorite part about working at the YMCA is that I get paid to basically play with kids all day long.
Every day when I walk into the classroom, all the kids get really excited to see me.
The kids brighten up your day every day. They are hilarious.
Being in college, the Y has always done phenomenally, trying to help make everything work to get me the hours that I need.
If I know I'm gonna have something come up all of a sudden, they've always worked around that.
Everyone's here to do good work, and with that, they have great personalities, and you just gain those friendships for life.
Behind you, and then you realize there's no shoulder to pull over safely, and you start thinking, oh, I don't want to get in a car accident.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, if I turn around, it's going to be gone.
Yeah.
And so just go to hell with it, and you just enjoy life and just continue on.
I wonder if the person behind you saw it as well.
Exactly. To me, you know what? I kind of think probably not. Probably, you know, they weren't paying attention. I don't know.
It sounds like you're by a lake that Bigfoot might have been drying off.
Yes, that's
like a dog does.
It looked very clean. It looked extremely like it had just bathed, and it was drying off in the wind because it was kind of windy that night.
Mm-hmm.
And the forest would have been hot and full of mosquitoes. And you can just kind of picture it. So I went on Google Maps, found where we saw it, and it was right where a stream comes out of a state forest and empties into the lake.
Gotcha.
So, geographically it made sense. Once again, did not see its face.
You saw its ass end of it, is what you saw. The back.
So its back, yeah. Broad, extremely broad shoulders, very little neck.
Did the vet see it too?
Motion. Yeah, oh yeah. Saw it extremely. Yeah. Yep. There you go.
Damn.
Better
Damn,
than silhouette in a bush.
Yes, better than a silhouette in a bush.
But not as scary because I'm in a car.
Well, you're moving at 75 miles or 70 miles an hour.
55.
You know. And but anyhow, mine was I was gonna get ready to eat, and that was the last thing in my mind was Bigfoot. But I knew there were Bigfoot out there because ever since I was a child, if you look it up, called the white-faced monster, it has been seen reports 30, 50 times.
Yeah.
And it stretches way back to the 1800s. These people have been seeing these things out there.
Yeah.
So
What are
settlers were even
face monster though?
Yeah, that's the white-faced monster. I'll send you the documentation, Doug. It's quite interesting. What one of them? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, in very few cases do we name our monsters up in the Midwest. Normally, that's a Southern thing,
Yeah.
They always put a pet name. So it's one of the first times I've ever heard a monster named in Minnesota.
Well, that name came from the loggers that were in that area first. They were logging out that area, and they if you read the lore and what they wrote about it, was they came into not just one Bigfoot, but a family of Bigfoot, or a whole tribe. They called them a tribe of Bigfoot.
Interesting.
And those Bigfoot went on the attack against those loggers. They were throwing things at them and trying to get them out of their area. So, it's not unheard of to see something out there. And so, like I said, I'll ship you over all that documentation because it's on the internet and stuff.
Love to see
the links.
Don't we have some news that you've got?
We do have some news. Enough about Bigfoot for the moment.
Get to it.
Yeah. Bear relocated after repeated snack runs at California store. November 11th, wildlife officials in California said they have captured and relocated a black bear that became famous online for its repeated visits to a gas station convenience store. California Department of Fish and Wildlife said the bear, which became a viral celebrity after security cameras recorded it pilfering snacks from inside the Chevron gas station in Kings Beach on multiple occasions, was safely captured and revealed to be 16-year-old male. Now, this is interesting because we just had Dr. Lynn Rogers on a couple weeks back on this show, and we learned all about black bears. Well, this particular black bear had a hanking for Little Debbie snack cakes. It would not be deterred. Officials said the bear has been relocated to a large, expansive wilderness suitable for bear habitat. Amy Bryant with the Bear League said she is concerned the bear's relocation could put its life at risk due to the leg injury from a broken bone that did not heal correctly. I think this was not a good thing for the bear, Bryant told KOVR TV. If he was taken to another bear habitat, that other bear is going to be territorial. This bear is compromised. He's crippled, Doug. He is crippled.
Yep.
Do you think it's fair? Do you think
First
they did
off,
the right
that's
thing?
an old bear. I mean, that really is. Excuse me. Most bears only live to an average of 8 to 10 years.
Really? So
Yep.
he is a geriatric bear.
Geriatric bear who'd probably been hit by a car, couldn't feed properly, and he discovered, the story's probably a friendly bear. Didn't bother anybody. He just told,
Hey, boo-boo.
He went inside, and that's amazing. I used to pump gas up in Forest Lake, and there would be a bear once in a while in the parking lot. A little bear. It was not a big bear. But it would just sit there and look at you while you pumped your gas. You know,
Yeah.
looking for a handout or whatever.
You know, yeah, the friendly neighborhood black bear.
But can you imagine the average person walking into the gas station to get a Coke, and there's a bear with his nose in the cooler?
Well, yeah, I'm looking right at it, and the bear is
It's a big
walking right through the doors, right through the gas station doors, like he's gonna make a purchase.
Yep.
And there's a guy there pointing the other way, like, get out of here, bear. The bear is undeterred. He wants his little Debbie's and his Coca-Cola. And that's just the way it's going to be. He's an old bear. He has every right to it. And after I heard, when he was done, he turned to the man and said, get off my lawn. That old bear did. Just saying.
Well, the moral of the story is we have to live with wildlife. Wildlife is moving back again. It is.
It is.
I have bear tracks, Joel, on my beach. And as you know, I don't live anywhere near you. You've got a lot of bears where you live.
We do have a lot of bears.
You probably have, the majority of the bears in Minnesota. But we're seeing them down here now. And
yeah, they are starting to move. Another thing, Doug, that they have found, I just found this out from a DNR official I know. We have wild boar making their way into Minnesota now.
I've heard that, but gosh, that's really weird.
Yeah,
I mean, that's weird. I saw
they made
wild
the
pigs.
crossover. They found them in Lake County, a whole bunch of them.
Is Lake County down by Winona?
Lake County is just west of St. Louis County. So they went through Cook County, and they've already crossed all those other counties.
Oh, that's up by you.
Yeah, they're coming in. And the problem with them is they are habitat destroyers.
Oh, big time.
They will destroy anything that they come across. They'll eat anything. They'll root up anything. They are definitely do not belong here. But
So how many bears or how many wild pigs were seen?
They've seen over 40 of them already and captured 12.
Ooh.
So they're looking to get rid of them, and also the wild turkeys are making a comeback up here as well. So that's a good thing.
Crazy.
It is really crazy. Mother Nature, the animals are coming back.
I remember interviewing a guy in South Dakota who was supposedly a turkey expert, and he said the reason we have turkeys in South Dakota only is because we have ponderosa pines, and they won't spread. Because I asked him, are these coming back and they're going to be all over the U.S. again? He goes, no. You got to have ponderosa pines. And I went,
that's
okay.
Insane.
And I accepted that. But now I see them everywhere.
They're everywhere now.
Yeah.
Everywhere. They're wild
flying
turkeys.
through windows of
They are. They're destructive.
They're chasing people. Yeah, they're quite.
Yeah, they're not they are not a nice bird.
No, they're actually.
They will rip you apart. They're not.
I don't know if they'll
nutty
rip
that
you
way.
apart.
Oh, they'll go crazy.
They might
I don't
pick
know.
you apart.
See, I have a fear of birds anyway. All right, it stems back to a parrot.
Well, I'm glad I know that.
Well, it's a big fear, and it's a long story to go with it.
Well, let
My
that
grandma owned one, and it was like a ninja parrot, and it wanted to murder me. And he told me that while it was assaulting me one time. It's intense. Okay, anyhow, Doug, you have potholes where you live?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. You live in a beautiful area. Never mind.
I ripped a tire off last year of my car.
Did you really? Yep. Well, Massachusetts, man, fed up. You actually did that. You ripped a tire
I did once.
Okay.
Many years
One
ago.
time. Massachusetts man, fed up with the local potholes, decided to take matters into his own hands and planted Christmas trees in the potholes on a busy road. Kevin Martin said his plan began Saturday night when he was on his way to pick up dinner in North Attleboro when he hit a series of potholes on Route 1 and ended up with all 4 of his tires flattened. Martin said he had previously complained to the town and state governments about these potholes, but no action was ever taken. I needed to make sure they got fixed, he said. I was going to take matters into my own hands. So what did he do? He planted Christmas trees in potholes.
Yeah, with potting soil.
With potting soil. The man is very conscious about what he's doing.
Yeah,
he's eco-friendly.
Yeah.
He's going to make sure they have a chance to grow. Good man that he is. But, there's a problem with that now. Isn't that kind of vandalism, though? You just cannot be running around every pothole and planting a tree.
He obviously got attention, and I guarantee those.
He did, and we're talking about him on Told Radio. So I mean, he made it somewhere. Got attention. You're right.
No, potholes are not good. They're dangerous.
They are not, because the reason why I threw that in is because we're coming upon the Christmas season, and Thanksgiving is only a couple weeks away, and we got turkeys running amok. We got potholes being filled with Christmas trees.
Joel, that was genius, though. You segued from bears to turkeys to Christmas. Potholes. It's genius.
It is genius. It is genius. We're going to run a break, though. When we come back, Dr. Esteban will be joining us. And don't miss this. I'm really interested in hearing what he has to say. We'll be right back right after this.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. Set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the Wacky Waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the Wacky Waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Heincheck. Got a great guest on tap tonight. We have primatologist Dr. Esteban Sarmiento is joining us tonight. I've been looking forward to this all day. Doug, you know him very well. You know Dr. Esteban very well, so I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about him.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm putting you right on the spot there. Look at that.
Yeah,
I'm making you be the intro man.
Well, I think Esteban can tell more about himself than anybody, but I've got to know him because he's been open-minded. So he's appeared on a number of Monster Quest shows, but we're not here to talk about monsters. We're here to talk about all of his amazing adventures down in Africa with gorillas, his work with early humans, which have been absolutely amazing. He wrote a book called Extinct Humans, which is really amazing. So why don't you go ahead and tell us first, Esteban, what your title means? You know, you're a primatologist, but some people may not know what that is.
Oh, there's a group of mammals that are closely related to us. Right, and mammals are the animals that have mammary glands and feed their young, right? So if you're a male, don't worry. Just because you don't have them, that doesn't mean the females don't, you know? So the females have mammary glands, feed their young. Our middle ears have 3 bones, right? And everybody knows them as the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup, right? Malleus, incus, and stapes. And we all have hair, and those are mammals. So out of that group of mammals, the primates are the ones within the mammals that are most closely related to us, and that's what a primatologist is. A person that studies those mammals most closely related to us, and those are called primates. Right? And share a number of features with us. Some of them are generalized features, like our 5-fingered hands, the vision, which is, tending towards or a cow, and et cetera. Can you hear me well?
Yep, we can hear you just fine. No, I was listening, and you're talking about the study of the primates, and you're talking about early man and stuff like that. I mean, how closely related we are. I mean, what did the first humans look like?
Well, that's always like the big problem. No one really knows what they look like, and we have to think that in some ways, the very early humans, they were probably things that we would probably have in the zoos, right? And we would have them with chimps and gorillas. But we really don't know exactly what it is that they look like, and we have yet to find fossils that we can be sure are human versus chimpanzee ancestors. And I know this is always said often, the first family, these fossils that they found in Ethiopia, they may be human ancestors, but they're also likely African ape ancestors. And not everybody believes that now. I do, and I think there's enough evidence that everybody will in the future believe that those aren't exclusive human ancestors.
Like they found a pretty much a full skeleton of what they call Ardipithecus.
Ardipithecus is not a complete skeleton, but it has a lot of it. There's a lot of it. Some of the hand bones, some of the finger bones. The skull is, fragmentary. There's the base of the skull is there, and a lot can be told from it. And I can say unequivocally, it's pre-African ape human divergence. That means that the animal came off of the human African ape line before humans and living African apes did. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Right. I think there's no doubt about that. I think
how
it has
old
enough
is that?
features. That's about 4 million years.
Wow.
4.2. See, this is the other thing too. There's not just one fossil site that produced Ardipithecus. There's a number of fossil sites that produced Ardipithecus, and some of them are quite old. So there's a site that, actually a number of sites that go back to 5.5 million years ago, and these sites produce very little, very small fragments that are really hard to identify. So they have just said they were Ardipithecus, probably partly because of convenience. What do you call something that comes from the same area but you're unable to identify it? Well, give it the same name, and maybe when more shows up, you'll be able to figure out that it's something different. But in likelihood, it's different than Ardipithecus, whatever it is that comes out of a 5 million year old, 5.2 million year sites in Ethiopia. It's probably different than Ardipithecus, and there's no reason to believe that it's anything but pre-human African ape.
Yeah, because
something that gives rise to.
Didn't it have really long arms?
Yeah, it has. Well, they're not super long, but they're longer than human arms. But I think that some of the things is it has, it doesn't have a foot that would suggest an adducted toe. Not that makes a lot of difference, but all of the features together show probably what is an animal that walked on all fours and was living a life more or less like a baboon. It would venture into wetlands, probably to get most of its food, and once in a while it probably went in trees where very tough, no more than baboons are, right?
So, any chance, Doctor, I don't mean to interrupt you at all, but any chance that there is more than one species of early human?
Oh, well, there's lots of different species. I guess, the book, I wrote a popular book called The Last Human, and we went over something like 27, 28 different species of that have been called early humans. So we know these are all different types. It's very hard.
Yeah, because that kind of makes you wonder how the people today, right, that they're living and populating the earth today, how we outcompeted like the Neanderthal, unless we are Neanderthals.
Well, Neanderthals existed. Neanderthals existed 200,000 years ago. And they weren't really that different from what we are. Sometimes people say if you shave it and put a suit on it and put it in the New York subway, you wouldn't know the difference, right? What it was, that it was a Neanderthal. And they have actually, overall, they have larger brains than modern humans do, on average. But they have hands and feet and arms and proportions, body proportions, more or less like ours. I mean, there is some difference, but they're not really that different than we are. And chances are, when we know that over time, there's been a lot of expansions of humans out of Africa. Sometimes, we see that they come through Turkey. Some of them might have actually come across from places like Morocco into Spain. So we really don't know how they all got there, but they keep coming from Africa, and these probably were modern human like we are, and they sort of mixed. Sometimes we think they swamped the Neanderthals. So Neanderthals were living in Europe during the Ice Age, and they were probably very small populations, and they probably got swamped from the big hordes of migratory humans that came out of Africa. And that's what we are.
Okay.
So we're not really what can I say? We're probably like an amalgam of Neanderthals and other species that came out of Africa, as Europeans. That's what's probably the best thing to say. And we probably have more of this other species that came out of Africa than we have of Neanderthals. But chances are there's some Neanderthal in us.
So there was interbreeding between Homo sapiens.
Yeah, correct. Interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthal.
Interesting.
So they're coexisting, is what you're saying. So I mean, if they were interbreeding,
absolutely. There's sites that suggest this actually, where they found, more or less side by side. They find them. Mm-hmm. Again, the problem is that you have this European isolate that we know is classic Neanderthal, and then you have these others that are like more progressive, and we probably think those are mixes of modern humans or Homo sapiens that came out of Africa that actually intermingled with them. And we found a lot of these quasi Neanderthals. We find them more like what we would call in the Middle East, and not in Europe, where they would have been bounded by glaciers.
Gotcha.
Is there a way to know whether a Neanderthal was covered with hair, whether they had,
how much hair they had, huh?
Yeah, what kind of hair, eyes, teeth? I mean, what do we know about them?
Well, one of the things we can say is, and we talked about this, I know I talked to you about this privately, but because they were in northern areas of Europe, they probably were light-skinned. They weren't dark-skinned Neanderthals. And you probably had redhead Neanderthals and...
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Blonde Neanderthal, right? Because that's what happens with latitude. You need enough sun for vitamin D production, and if you live in areas with low sun and you don't have the ability to produce vitamin D because you're not getting your sunlight, what happens is you get bone diseases called rickets. And in the old days, like the African slaves would suffer from rickets when they were brought up in the northern latitudes to work in. So we can probably almost be, almost with 100% confidence say that the classic Neanderthals that were isolated in the glaciers of Europe were probably white-skinned or light-skinned. They could have been more like, more yellowish color, like you would say, Asiatics, Chinese. They may have been like that. We probably think that they were probably more like white-skinned.
That is very interesting, because I'm reading some of your work, and I'm also reading some other papers here and going over this a little bit while you're talking, and a lot of suggestions seem to think that we really hail from, of course, the African continent, is where a lot of the fossil record has been found during the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. So we actually, as time goes on, it's a funny thing with fossils, because once people find them someplace, you get a group of people going there to look for them there. And it doesn't mean they don't exist other places, but it's just, it doesn't really pay your time to go to a place that's totally unexplored where no one's ever found anything and go look for it, because the chances that you're going to find something are very small. So people generally stick to the places. So in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s, it was almost like a frenzy to go to Africa to find fossils, because fossils had been found there before. But I guess it would have been like in the mid-1990s. Unbeknownst to anyone, the people from Georgia, right? Georgia's between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, right? A little bit east of Turkey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And north of Iran, if that gives anybody any indication. We have the country of Georgia, and they started finding these very early humans that look a lot like the stuff that, like 2 million year old stuff from Africa. And, no one ever expected them there, but now they have quite a lot of them, almost full skeletons of them, lots of skulls, and they look like what we could call the earliest human. And that's about at 2 million years,
So if
Georgia.
Yes. So if Ardipithecus is considered by you, I guess, is more of an ape, I would imagine that things like they were calling, I think years ago I read Sivapithecus from 8 to 11 million years ago. I mean, some people are saying those are human or pre-human.
No, well, they did it one time. I mean, things sometimes go in fads. Back when they were found, Sivapithecus is quite old, from India, right? 8 to 11 million years old, and it was actually even known at the time of Darwin, that when Darwin wrote his
really?
The Descent of Man, it was even known back then. Yeah, so it was known from the 1870s, 1880s originally, and people went and found more around the 1900s, around the turn of the century. They became quite popular as possible human ancestors. And then this was sort of debunked because when you really looked at them, they looked very orangutan in some features. And this was done all on teeth, huh? They had a fragment of the other, but it looked very orangutan in other features. And I guess a guy, William King Gregory, back in the 20s, wrote about Sivapithecus, about being, something that approximates humans, but it's really, really an ape. And somebody came back in the 30s and resurrected it as a human ancestor, and again, everybody poo-pooed the idea, and in the 60s it was resurrected again. But now, when they went back, I guess in the mid-80s of last century, right, 1980s, 1985, they found the complete skull of one of the things. It's only maybe 8 million years old, the skull, 8.5, and it looks, if you saw it from far away, you'd think it was an orangutan. If you look at it carefully, it has some differences with orangutans, but they're not super marked, the skull, that is. And it has enough features, though, that we would say it's already in the direction of orangutans. So you could say it's probably the first indication, or one of the earliest indications of orangutans existing. And as you know, orangutans are more distantly related to us gorillas and chimpanzees than any of us are to each other. That means gorillas are much closer relatives to me than an orangutan is. That's the most distantly related great ape.
Okay.
So I've got one more question, Joel, and then
not a problem.
I'm just curious about bipedalism. Is that something that is the line between apes and humans, or is that not it?
Yeah,
is that not the marker?
I mean, bipedalism was walking on two legs, right?
Right.
Okay, and I mean, I don't know. I've seen dogs walk on two legs, haven't you?
Sure,
I've
seen it on YouTube.
Poodles, right,
Yeah.
and at the circus, and they walk on two legs. So, and actually, this has always been a contentious point. Did these dinosaurs, these enormous dinosaurs, stand up on two legs or not?
Right.
There's this Camplosaurus that they did a reconstruction of it up in two legs, and people said, no, it could have never gone up two legs. Well, I've seen elephants stand up on hind legs for obvious reasons, right? How else is it going to get laid?
True.
Right?
True.
Right. So it's got to get up. I mean, the bulls get up on two legs. So all animals stand up a little bit on two legs. And now when you get to those animals most closely related to us, they're more frequently two-legged walkers. So, you get an orangutan, especially if it's in the swamps, it will almost always be in two legs. If the water's waist deep, it's not going to go on all fours. I have this photograph. I can send it to you of this man in Africa in a I guess it's a park, but it's also an area where they rehabilitate chimpanzees, and he's feeding the chimpanzees from his canoe, and the chimpanzees, of course, are on two legs because they're waiting. They don't want to have to, they don't want to eat, with their forearms in the water, right? So they stand on two legs, and they're standing there eating. And again, and chimps, can stand on two legs for a long time, especially pygmy chimpanzees, which are even known to stand on two legs more. But all of the apes, not just the great apes, even the gibbons, the lesser apes, they also stand on two legs. So standing on two legs is a behavior that's common to all of our closest relatives, the apes.
But in modern humans, they say that we developed bipedal, we do.
It's sort of right.
In trees.
True. Now, this is, well, it's not in trees that we developed walking on two legs. Now, we had some pre-adaptations, or we had a propensity to come to the ground that made it easier for us because we had to have a straight back to climb trees. If you climb trees, you sort of have to straighten your back and put your arms up higher than your legs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're going to climb it backwards. But I don't know. I never did that. Okay, so you reach up, and when you reach up for that branch, even I remember as a 4-year-old reaching up for branches to climb trees, and you have to reach up and straighten your back and try to grab as high as you could, a branch that'll hold you, and then you move on to the next branch, right? So this is the type of thing, and we call it vertical climbing. When we, reach up and go up a tree. So if you think of an animal that might have lived part of its time on the ground, but its food was in the trees, it would have to move from tree to tree on the ground, but then go up the trees to get at the food, right? Mm-hmm. And we would say that would be like a vertical climb. And this is the kind of animal that probably gave rise to the great apes, an animal that was a vertical climber. It probably depended for its food on trees, but moved around on the ground, maybe have slept in trees. But it wasn't as committed to trees as, say, orangutans presently are.
It split its time, is what you're saying, between trees and the ground.
And the ground, but it was able to move on the ground. This is what we think of as being the common ancestor of us great apes and humans.
Interesting.
Okay, as far as bipedality, like you're saying, when it's we call it sometimes obligate, requisite, full-time bipedality, and the truth is, especially as we get older, when we're little kids, we don't mind that much being on our knees or sitting on our ass or even crawling around a little bit. But as we get older, we tend to stand on two legs, And I don't know if you've ever been to a professional meeting. Everybody's standing on two legs, and they don't sit down on chairs.
Yeah.
Which seems silly, but because I always prefer to sit.
Mm-hmm.
So people stand around on two legs. So we can actually stand on two legs almost effortlessly. That means we use mostly our bone structure to support our body weight, and we don't really have to fight muscularly to keep it in that position.
Yeah, because we have the skeletal system that will do most of the heavy lifting for us.
That'll do it passively, right? It doesn't have to be active, while other animals have to. And you've seen the dog. If you feed a dog treats, you know that it has a hard time keeping that. It's actually exerting much more energy, and it's trying harder, in other words, to keep those postures. So with humans, we develop this ability too. And, oddly enough, I've been studying this ability to stand on two legs for a long time. And I really haven't found very good explanations for why humans do it. I mean, some monkeys do it so they can see over the high grasses. So there's a Patis monkey, the military monkey they call it, or Patis monkey, that you'll often see as it stands up and it looks to see where it's going to over the grasses, and it's doing so on two legs. Even sometimes when it's on top of trees, it stands up on two legs to get a better look. So these are some of the reasons or it could have been a reason why humans stood on two legs. And chimps stand on two legs sometimes if they're below a tree to feed on the fruits above it. It will stand on two legs and reach. And we know they stand on two legs when they go and start climbing up a tree. That, the first step is to reach up. And so all those things, some people said humans stood on two legs so they could use their hands for carrying stuff. I didn't really buy that. Basically, I realized that usually these postures, these standing on two legs, or usually have to do with feeding. Because why else would the animal do it if it wasn't to get food? Maybe, to get laid. But a lot of animals have to get on two legs to get laid. That doesn't make them full-time bipeds. Unless they're very, very, unless you have to postulate they're very, very horny. Right? So basically we think it's a feeding thing. And when we see like where a lot of these fossils are found, these modern or human, not modern human, but pre-human fossils, things that we really think, well, they're ape-like, but they're going towards humans. And we find a lot of these in shallow water habitats. That means at the bend in rivers, at lake shores. And part of the reason is because that's where the skeleton can be fossilized, right? But sometimes we find a lot of complete stuff in that environment, suggesting that the animal probably lived close by. Sure. And so I believe, and there is some evidence for it, that what got us to walk on two, at least beginning to stand on two, was wading. That means we probably fed in areas where there was low-lying water, and it's obviously a good places to feed, because when there's water around, there's food around, right? We know like a lot of the vegetables depend on water to grow, a lot of the stuff that we eat, the fruit also. And we also know that animals depend on water to drink. So, the lion goes to the watering hole if it's going to have a meal, even though it doesn't eat plants, right? Because there's other animals there drinking and it can eat. So we probably think that humans probably hung around the water holes to get some of these underground bulbs and roots and tubers. And that feeding in those areas probably helped them develop bipedality full time.
See, I would have thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
Really quickly, I would have thought that through evolution, that being bipedal just would have been a quicker and less effort involved in travel as well. I mean, it's easier to walk on two legs through terrain.
That's totally in agreement. You realize that it has to come in stages. It can't all of a sudden, an animal that was on all fours all of a sudden gets on two and starts walking long distances on two. In a way, I guess there's a line by some paleontologists that he never saw an intermediate biped, a quadruped. So an animal that's intermediate between a biped and a quadruped, he can't imagine what it would be. It would be a triped? No. Obviously, the animal is a quadruped that begins to walk on two legs more frequently. And obviously,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, it has to. It can't happen. Your mom is on all fours, but you're on two legs.
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we're thinking of is an animal that was forced to feed in certain postures because it could have been because of shallow water, and then because it stood in those postures, then it was more convenient for it to walk around on two legs. And like you said, it correctly, if you're moving long distances, it's more energy efficient to be on two legs, and it's also less costly because you're less likely to get a splinter on the base of your feet than you are on the base of your palms and your feet. There's more stuff to get injured. It's the old, moving parts. An engine that has the least moving parts it is generally more less likely to break down than one that has a lot of moving parts because there's more stuff that can go wrong with it.
Yeah, and that includes robots. If you're going to try to get a robot to walk, it's easier to get a robot to walk on 2 legs than 4.
Than it is on 4, right? There's but one thing is like we walk on 2 legs because we have a hell of a lot of balance. So I doubt you're going to get, you can get the robot to walk, but I wonder if you can get him to walk with the balance we have. That would take a little bit more, and run and walk and change speeds like that. And right, but it is much more difficult to get, just simply to get an animal to get a robot to walk on all 4s, right? A lot more movement, a lot more moving parts.
It's interesting to note that if you're going to get like game camera footage, water hole, nothing beats a water hole, or nothing beats water for drying animals. I love your theory, but my question is, are there other anthropologists that agree with you or disagree with you?
I would say there's a lot of bullshit. That means you have a lot of people that never even seen a wild animal that start saying these things. And to tell you the truth, I would have never thought about that until I started actually seeing wild animals wade in water.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you talk to other people and that have similar ideas, and then you start to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, what reason? If you say the animal was collecting fruit under a tree, so or around some bush. So sometimes you're feeding around these bushes that you can't really get it while you're on 4s. So you're reaching over and grabbing these fruit. But once in a while, some of those fruit must be on the ground too. It's not preventing you from going back on all 4s. And if you're really going to get on 2, you need these prolonged bipedal bouts. You need these prolonged periods of walking around on 2 legs. And what's going to give you that better than waiting?
Yeah. Well, you're an innovator.
I'm just saying, and I wasn't the first one to actually say it. People have been ridiculed long ago for thinking of those things. But we know, sometimes you track animals, and I've tracked gorillas and chimps. And you see, especially with chimpanzees, when they get to wet areas, wet ground, and it doesn't even have to have a lot of water, just an inch, and be a little bit muddy and sticky, they get up on 2 legs and do it on 2 feet. And
less effort, easier to travel.
And another thing too, I don't know if you get your hands sticky and gooey, isn't it uncomfortable? Like your fingers stick together and stuff, and no one likes to have that. And not even the chimpanzees like to have that. They like to keep their hands clean, because in a way you lose some of your touch when your hands are sticky, and it's uncomfortable, right? I'm not. You have the same, that you have to go and wash it, like say, right? You get it dirty, you feel like you have to go and get rid of it, So you don't want to stick your hands in mud if you don't have to, if you can avoid it. Right?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Oh, go ahead.
There's a bunch of other stuff, but you're thinking, in a place like say South Africa, and people think it's Africa, right? But say around Johannesburg, give you a town, it actually can snow in Johannesburg in September, right? Because they're a little bit flipped around, they're in the southern hemisphere, so their winters are really. From June to September, their winters, just like our summers, it's their winter. And you do get snow, and the temperatures at night are freezing. So if you think you're going to go, in some shallow water and, put your hands in it, freezing cold, you're just not going to do it. So,
very true.
I guess,
very true.
Yeah, I guess the more you look at it, you can sort of think of waiting as like a stage that made it possible for humans to be able to walk for prolonged periods. Right?
What's your thoughts, Dr. Sarmiento, on Lucy, the fossil Lucy, is that how we looked? Was that the go-between?
Well,
I mean, you know,
when you really look at Lucy and you look at it objectively, it doesn't have one character that tells you it's human and not an African ape. If you sort of looked at it and you say, well, it's human because it has this or that, you know, and I don't want to go. I mean, there's lots of characters we can talk about, and we probably lose a lot of people by talking about.
Yeah.
But what I want to tell you, sometimes they say it's the angle in the leg, you know, or et cetera, et cetera. It's the shape of the hip. But the truth is, Lucy doesn't have any special character that makes it more specially related to us than it is to African apes.
Okay, because of course, as you know, they point to Lucy as being the almost end all
first
be all.
family.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah.
They point to her as being. Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Well,
me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
I don't want to interrupt you, but you know, you got me because I feel very passionate about this stuff, because you sort of have to think about it. I go to Africa, and I'm basically a person that, you know, is based in the United States. I go to Africa to find fossils. Somebody gives me millions of dollars to do so. I come back, and hey, I found what may be a chimpanzee ancestor. Wouldn't it be better to say I found the earliest human or human ancestor? What sounds best?
True. Yeah. Results.
So there's pressure for these people to say that this thing is a human ancestor, and in a way, we're probably more interested in finding human ancestors than the majority of people, or the public is, than in finding, you know, what could be a gorilla ancestor.
Mm-hmm. There's even politics and primatology, it sounds.
Well, I would say there's lots of politics in primatology. But this is really paleoanthropology. It's the study of fossil humans and fossil. But we can safely say that humans were things that we would call early humans don't really appear till around 2 million years ago. That means forms that back in the 1870s. Let me go back to this. Back in the 1870s, Darwin wrote this book called The Descent of Man. It's the one he wrote maybe 11, 12 years after The Origin of Species. I think it was 1871. And he sort of outlined 4 characters that humans have that seem to be interrelated that other animals may have, but they don't have the 4 together. And that is tool use, bipedality, you know, walking on 2 legs, the enlarged brains, and the reduced teeth. So his take on it, and others, and other humans could have the reduced teeth because their hands were handy and they could make tools, so they didn't need the large canines. And of course, the big brain allowed them more handiness because it made them think and they could do things with their hands. And walking on 2 legs freed these hands to do all this stuff. And, you know, it was a good story, and people still stick to that. But, you know, it's a lot more complicated than that. But if you look at the fossil record, those animals that have bigger brains than great apes seem to walk most of their time on two legs, right? Use tools, manufactured tools. Those animals appear about 2 million years ago, and we can actually call them early humans. Anything before that gets to be iffy.
Gotcha. Say, Esteban, you've done a ton of amazing gorilla work, in Africa, on the ground, in the bush. Let's change subjects and talk about gorillas for a while. Yeah, let's tell us about your work.
Well, I can tell you what I was very interested is where it is that the gorilla lives. You can think of, here in North America, you can say, where do deer live, right? And if you're a deer hunter, you sort of have an idea where deer lives, right? Deers generally are at the edge between the forest and an open field, right? Yeah. That's not right. So then it's sort of like the same thing. So do deer live in swamps? Well, they may, right? Do they live in cities? No, they don't live in cities. Okay, so the whole thing is, my interest was to find out which habitat was conducive to having gorillas and why.
Yeah.
And of course I got some surprises, because gorillas do like open areas. They do live in forests, but they like to feed sometimes in open areas, clearings in the forest, you can call them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the gorillas live, and this is another thing, another big surprise, they live in East Africa, not West Africa, because there's two different types of gorillas, right? There's the Western and the Eastern gorilla. And in the East, where I studied mostly the gorilla, I study some in the West, but mostly in the East, they live at high elevations. That means they're found between, 3/4 of a mile above sea level and nearly a mile above sea level. No, not as much as a mile, but nearly. Okay? Well, no, let me see. 4,000 meters. They're found up to 4,000 meters. How much is that? So from a mile, 3/4 of a mile at the lowest to about 4,000 meters would be...
it's like 2.5 miles.
Yeah, to 2.5 miles above. So they live in those areas. And generally, when you look at them, they live in areas where humans aren't there. And there is areas where they live side by side with humans, and one of the things that happens is they get eaten.
The gorillas do.
The gorillas do. They wander into some farmer's banana patch, and you'd think gorillas like bananas, but the truth is they like the shoot.
Okay.
As it comes out, so they just rip apart the banana plant to get at the at the shoots that are producing the new leaves, the core of that. Yeah. And of course that gets the farmers very angry, and they go out and eat the gorilla.
Wow.
So, but
take that, gorilla.
That's right. You figure at least you're not wasting those plants you grew. Because you'll eat the animal that ate those plants.
Yeah.
But
what are they
after? The other thing that...
So you say they want the shoot, but why eat the shoot? Why not the banana?
It seems like it has a lot of water and proteins.
Huh.
Yeah, oddly enough, gorillas don't seem to drink. They, I've seen them, I've seen them next to the river once, but I never actually saw them drinking. The river, lake, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, I never saw them actually drinking. Chimpanzees will drink, but I never saw gorillas. And a lot of the vegetation they eat, we can call them succulents or vegetables that are pretty filled up with liquid.
Yeah.
So they're probably getting most of their... What's that?
Oops. I was going to say, how close have you gotten to these gorillas? I mean,
Well, they grabbed me. How's that? They grabbed me, dragged me,
No, but what I'm saying is... No, my question was, are they as aggressive as they're portrayed?
No, they're not aggressive. They're not aggressive. They eat. They, like I always say, they eat. They don't eat meat, so they're not going to eat you. They're vegetarians.
Yeah,
You know,
Esteban told me. Esteban, I remember. I'll never forget. I was talking to you about gorillas and aggression, and you said, "Yeah, you were grabbed and dragged," and you said, "I wasn't worried because I know they don't eat meat."
That was
That's
for real?
right.
I thought you were joking with me. They grabbed you and dragged you?
Yes, they do that. There's a hierarchy in a gorilla group. You know, usually you have your male, who's an adult male, and if he's been, if he's had that group for a while, he'll have like a couple of wives, and he'll have some, immature sons. Some are teenage sons, and daughters, and some are younger, like newborns. But within the immature animals in the group, they all have to like sort of prove like who's who, and so they'll come and charge you, and they'll be playful in a way, but I mean, they'll bite you, they'll drag you, and I got bitten plenty of times by gorillas.
What's that like?
Like where they'll break the skin?
I mean, are they
the thing, I always wore a sweatshirt with a long sleeve T-shirt. Because first of all, there's sometimes gnats in those places, and the gnats are they're horrible. And so you're always covered. And the other thing is, if I did get bitten or grabbed and beat up, having two shirts makes sure. So they never broke my skin. All my bites had never broke my skin, and I had one in my butt and one in my back that were actually black and blue.
Okay, you're the bravest man I've ever talked to. I'm telling you, I would be so out of there. It wouldn't. My hair would be on fire if I had it. But
I'll tell you what. In general, in the East, they live in pretty hilly environment. Remember, we were talking about elevations between 3/4 of a mile and 2.5 miles up, and these are hilly areas. So we can outrun them downhill. I mean, I could just run all day downhill. There's no way they can catch me. But if I'm going uphill, they're going to catch me.
Gotcha.
So if there's like two of them standing in the downhill position, I got to run uphill to get away from them. They're going to come after and catch me. So the best thing to do is just drop on your knees. I usually would put my fingers underneath my armpits because I was always deathly scared they'd grab my hand and bite it. And I mean, people have gotten bit by them, and they, if you do get bit in a broken skin, you can get an infection. I mean, their mouth, is not exactly sanitary.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever been killed by a gorilla?
No, I do remember once that we were walking in this is like in Bwindi National Park. It's right on the border with Rwanda and the Congo. And we were walking, and they told us, there's a male there on the path, and he and he's very aggressive. And sometimes the young males, when they first get their first wives, and I mean, you see this behavior in humans too. The male becomes very protective of the female. After a while, they don't care that much. But in the beginning, they're like super protective, and you've seen this kind of behavior, right?
Interesting.
For in humans, So this male ran out at us when we were. I mean, we knew it was there, but we didn't expect it when it came at us. And of course, I was with a ranger, and he's like armed, so of course I threw him in front of me. But the animal charged us, and he just yelled at us, and you could feel the heat of his breath in our face. And then he, instead of smacking me because I was a little bit in the rear position, he smacked the ranger. And then he looked at us like we're just a bunch of pussies, and he was huffing and puffing and staring at us, walking back and forth, just saying, "What a bunch of weak assholes you are." And we didn't try to disagree with him. We actually agreed, yes, we are worthless and weak. Like I said, I would have done push-ups if he told me to. So he walked away. But a week later, after we had that incident, he grabbed some tourist, and the tourist ran, which is the worst thing you can do because it excites him, And he grabbed him and bit him, and he basically took his ass muscle, pulled his ass muscle. Actually, first what he did is he pulled ripped the backpack right off his back, and then he bit him, and the guy tried to run, so he like tore his ass muscle, and they had to evacuate the guy with a helicopter. You know, I mean, a lot of these tourists that go to watch gorillas, they have good insurances, so they were able to evacuate the guy. And I don't know what happened to him, but he didn't die. He was beat up, but he wasn't dead. But that's probably like I would say that's the extent of like bad things that can happen.
Yeah.
How strong is a gorilla compared to a man?
How what?
How strong is a gorilla compared to a,
I mean, it's hard. I mean, he doesn't have like lower body, the hip down. It's sort of small compared to but I mean, his arms are just humongous.
Yeah.
And if you get just a swat, I mean, not a punch, but just a swat will knock you over. So he's very strong upper body. Very, it's almost like saying like his arms are like as strong as our legs. But they
It's
have
reversed,
the
is
same
what
movement
you're
arms.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but they have a lot of movements in their arm. So he has this big chest, and he's got a lot of strength in his upper body, so he can just pick you up. I mean, he can one-handedly basically pick you up. So he can reach out with you and grab you by the by the scruff of your neck and just throw you.
Yeah.
He is, and this is an adult male if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But they don't like to do that stuff.
So they're gentle giants.
Yeah, they're very easygoing. So one of the things I wanted to say though, that when we were pulled apart a little bit before, we were talking about one of the things that surprised me is that they don't live close to humans generally. The populations like just try to stay away from humans, and they always live at a higher elevation than the nearest human population. They never live below the nearest human population in elevation.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking about it, and one of the things is that there is waterborne diseases. So they're susceptible to the same waterborne diseases that humans are. So generally, those gorillas that weren't smart enough to go to higher elevations probably, most likely, caught human diseases and died.
Well, you know what they say, the crap rolls downhill.
That's right. So you always find them. You always find, especially in the east, eastern gorillas, you always find them in elevations higher than the surrounding populations. And this ensures that their water supply is, free of human pathogens.
But think how smart that is, though.
Well, I mean, it's partly smart and partly, those that didn't do that are not around to tell us that. I mean, it's everybody's familiar with Jane Goodall, right?
Yeah.
Right, and the chimps and Gombe, and in Gombe, the chimps, a lot of the chimps, well, they don't exist anymore, but a lot of them caught polio. A lot of the chimps caught polio from being in areas downstream from human populations, and of course, they didn't do too well with the polio epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Polio is a waterborne disease, and if I go ahead and take a number 2 in the stream, and you drink that water, and I have polio, you will get polio.
Mm-hmm.
And polio is one of the diseases that some people get it, and it's not that bad for them, but other people get it, and they're paralyzed.
Yeah.
So this is the sort of thing. This is the sort of thing that the African apes are up against, and you could say, what environments do they live on? Well, I learned what environments they lived at and what environments are good for them. Well, keep them away from humans.
Mm-hmm.
Are
they endangered?
Yeah. The gorilla populations are endangered, and so are chimpanzees. And I mean, in a way, had they lived any place else, they wouldn't be there. Do you know anything about orangutans? They live in Asia, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no orangutan lives in mainland Asia. But in the past, they did. And how they disappeared from mainland Asia is probably human competition. Humans got rid of them.
Yeah.
And, they lived as high as 34 degrees latitude in Asia. And, I mean, some people say the Homo erectus site of Zucutan, with Peking man. I think you heard Beijing man, Peking man. I don't know. It's like some people say there's orangutan teeth mixed in there, so that would make their latitude as high as 40-some degrees north of the equator. I don't know if that's true, but we can say from other sources that there is orangutan fossils that are at 30 degrees, and they're not that old.
But it would seem, Doctor, that everywhere humans populate, they force all the other creatures out.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of They force creatures out, or they force them into other areas where there isn't a lot of humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we can think of sub-Saharan Africa, and we can think the animals are there. We might say a lot of the animals that live in the forest weren't naturally forest animals, but were forced there with human competition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably true. That's probably true of the great apes. The great apes were probably more woodland animals, not forest animals, but animals that lived between, fields and bushes and lake shores. Then they were animals in forests. But once they started competing with humans, that was the only safe place to go.
Well, I mean, is that what... I don't want to make this come off as just horrible, but isn't that one of the perks of being top of the food chain? Is you force everything out?
I guess it's one of the... Yeah, but it's you can just end with everything, but it's not a good
No, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that's what we've done.
That's what we've done.
Throughout history.
That's sort of what we've done. And I guess we're not really we're omnivores, so we're not really like a carnivore on top of the food chain, but we are dominant. We're a dominant life form because we take cities. We build cities. I mean, we change the landscape completely.
A biologist once told me on a radio show that I was doing, and he said something very poignant to me. He says, humans allow other species to live. We are so good at killing that we had to make seasons to stop ourselves from doing it, such as deer season and grouse season. We're that good.
To stop from them becoming extinct. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We manage the animals. And that's like the future for all the animals. The future for all the animals is they're going to live in areas where humans let them exist and they're managed.
So is the gorilla population the lowest it's ever been right now?
No, I wouldn't say it's the lowest. No, it's hard to know over time. Like sometimes what you could do is with genetics, sometimes by running proteins, you can kind of get an idea if the population was big or small in the past by the amount of variability that you find within the genetic makeup of the individuals in that population. Like when you have very little variation, generally that means those animals came from a very small population. So you can do this and try to estimate what past population sizes were like. And we don't really think, at least in East Africa, or eastern gorillas, which are on the western rift of East Africa, that those populations are much smaller than what they used to be. But on the western side, we're not really sure if that's the case. They've probably pretty much been steady, the population sizes.
What's the weirdest gorilla story that you can tell?
I don't know. I mean,
there's got to be some strange adventures that you had.
Well, besides like getting pulled and stuff, and sometimes gorillas recognizing who you are because they can recognize who you are, and and generally when you approach a group and they don't know you, that's when they come out and drag you and try to bluff you and beat you or whatever, yell at you. But once they know you, they tolerate you.
Have you become an honorary gorilla at this point?
No, I haven't become an honorary gorilla. But
where you show up and they're like just totally accepting of you yet, or do you still?
In certain areas I've shown up and they're tolerant. Yeah, they're totally tolerant. I mean, I probably have a lot better elephant stories than I have gorilla stories. And there's one that I'm very fond of telling. I used to when I go to work on the gorillas. I was living in Kampala, which is a city, and I was teaching anatomy at the medical school there. You know, if I go to work in these third world countries, I don't like to not give a little bit, you know, to the people around me. So I would teach anatomy at the medical school, and then I would take 2 or 3 weeks and go to the field. And it was the dirt road that went into the national park that I worked on would be like a 4 or 5 hour dirt road that was full of ditches and hairpin turns because it was up in the mountain. And it would take you like maybe 5 hours to do. By the time you were just tired. Or what you could do is get dropped off and take a shortcut. It was basically just going straight uphill, walking straight uphill. And you could do the walk in about 3 hours. So it actually would take you less to do the walk than to drive the car. So I got to the point where I would just do the walk, you know, and of course, like if I didn't make it to the ranger station where I would sleep, I would just open up my tent and sleep on the ground. So once I got there, and it was sort of late, and to top things off, I didn't mind walking at night, you know, and there wasn't really any. Once in a while, there might be a leopard or something, but there wasn't anything that would, you know, bother you really in that forest. So I would just put my tent down on the ground, and just go to sleep. And I remember it was raining because no other reason why I would have gone to sleep. And as I'm sleeping, I hear like the wind. It seems like blowing the bamboo because this place was like a bamboo forest. So it would just blow on the bamboo, and I would hear like chick, 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 like the bamboos hitting each other, you know? It's sort of like a wind chime. But I would go back to sleep, and then I would hear it, and then it started sounding like the bamboo would be closer and closer, the chick, chick sound from the bamboo, you know? And after a while, I said, hey, wait, this isn't the wind. This is some animal that's doing this, you know? And I have my tent, you know, in the middle of the road, and all of a sudden, I hear this thing drops onto the road, and the ground shook. You know?
Oh, boy.
And I knew right away it was like an elephant. You know, I knew nothing that size, you know?
Yeah.
And there was no rhinoceros. It had to be like an elephant. So I pulled the zipper, a little bit of my tent. I crouched, first of all. I said, if I'm lying down and this thing steps on me. But one thing we have to remind everyone that elephants aren't cruel. You know, they could kill you in a minute, but they don't eat meat and they don't care. They don't want to beat you up. There's no gain for them in doing that. So he just walked right to my tent, and I'm looking at it, and it was like pretty dark. You know, if it's raining and there's cloud cover, there's no light. There's no stars or moonlight. There was very little light, and I could just see a little bit of his eye, like the gleam in his eye, and a little bit of his tusk. That's all I could see. And I heard him snort, right? And he walked away. I was so relieved because I was a little bit.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free, upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Oh, that's a cheer we used to do in softball.
What? It's actually Geico.
Whenever someone hit a triple, we would wave our bats and yell, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. But we never got to use it because we would only hit home runs. Annoying.
The phrase is from Geico because they help save people money.
Geico? Yeah, they were our team sponsor.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You know, I didn't know the animal. I hadn't seen the animal, and he was standing, you know, my tent is sort of flimsy, but he was standing very close to my tent. When I got up the next morning, I saw there was a footprint of the elephant about 8 inches from the front of my tent, you know, where I enter and exit. And when he snorted, he obviously had dropped a piece of bamboo on top of the tent that he was eating. Right? So I looked around, and I went, you know, one of the things we all do when we get up in the morning is go, number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went and took a number one, took some of my stuff, apart, took my tent apart to put it back, and right from the hill below me, because this was like a hill, he jumped from the high part to the road, but right below the road, on my other side, I see this big gray thing coming out and standing up. And obviously the elephant had slept next to me the whole night.
Oh, jeez.
Right? And I just left my tent, all my stuff. I left it on the road, and I ran up the road, like in the bend of the road. And I watched, and I said, now he was probably going to step on everything, out of spite or something. But he didn't. He very carefully walked around all my stuff. He didn't step on anything, I had my water purifier. I was all, I said, fuck, if he breaks that, he steps on it, he just throws it, whatever. And he went and he just stepped around it, and he went to the side of the road and started eating bamboo. And I was able to go back while he's there, pick up all my stuff, and put it in the tent, and leave. And he didn't. And I remember you ever see like a cow? Sometimes they can look a little bit behind. They sort of pull their eyeball out a little bit, and they can stare a little bit, not just to the side, but a little bit almost behind them. I don't know if you had that experience with, but the elephant does sort of like the same thing. He was kind of like eyeballing me a little bit, but even though his head was turned forward, eating, he would eyeball me a little bit. And I never thought much about that encounter, but any other time that I slept in the forest in that area, guess who would come and sleep with me? The elephant. Right. So
you made a friend.
We figured that there had been gold miners there, Greek gold miners. And he was an old animal, and he probably had, he probably knew them from when he was young, and they were white, and I was white, and he hadn't seen white people, and he probably associated it with something, in his past that was positive, or would make him feel safe. So he was like an older male. I don't know if you know, older males don't stay in their group; they get kicked out when they get too old.
Yeah.
When the females of their contemporaries get older from breeding, too old for breeding, he kind of gets kicked out, and younger males with younger females take over the group. So they just become solitary. And this guy must have been in his 50s, I'd say. He was, his tusks were very worn. That usually gives a good indication of age. So anyway, he would always sleep with me. And I remember the day, the last day I worked in the forest. I don't know how. He knew it was a coincidence, I figured, but it's the last day I'll never forget. I was happy to get out, and I went down the trail, that it's steep coming up, but going down, it's easy to go down the steep, because it's not a lot of work. And I'm going, and it's a very thin ridge that you have to walk along. And lo and behold, who's there? He's sitting on the ridge eating, and and I can't go through it because it's steep on either side, and I can't walk along the trail. And I really can't go around them. And I'm really, he's still a wild animal, even though we became good friends. So he's like, I'm throwing little stones at him to try to get him off the trail, He finally looks back at me, and he takes this big crab. I mean, it must have been, it must have been like, a meter high. And so that's assured I had to walk, but it took me a day to walk out of that place, because I couldn't take the shortcut because he was blocking it. And that's the last I saw of him. I wonder if he's even alive now.
Wow.
But that's an elephant story. That I don't have any gorilla story that matches that. That was just
Sounds kind of wild.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Esteban, on like Coco, this gorilla that did sign language, and what are your thoughts?
Well, this is a great thing about humans, and you can have your neighbor, and you can have his rich neighbor, you can have a poor neighbor, you can have a guy that has all the degrees in the world, and you can have a guy that, never went to school, but no matter who it is, they always think they're smarter than you. And I figure that's one of the human characteristics. They always think they're smarter, or they can outsmart the other person. And humans almost think the rest of the animals are all stupid, or But you got to realize these animals are closely related to us, so they have pretty much very similar mental abilities than we have. And I'm sure somebody's going to, somebody with lots of PhDs is totally going to disagree with me, and I just laugh at them because I know as a fact ability, and of course it's not the same as ours, but they're not done by any stretch of the imagination. They have a lot of the same thoughts. They think like we do. They dream, all those things like we do, and it doesn't surprise me at all that they could sign and remember things like words. Now, are they going to write poems and stuff like that? There's no motivation for them to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really no motivation for them to talk. But I guess if you give them those motivations, they probably will, because they have those abilities. So I'm not really surprised by Coco. Or what it really
Makes
tells
sense.
us about them, except things that we already know, how close they are related to us. But they're very close. In fact, it's probably only 4 million years ago that we had a common ancestors with chimps and gorillas. If you think the Earth being 4.5 billion years old, life that has skeletons being 600 million years old, the last ancestor common with chimps and gorillas is probably only 4 million years old.
Yeah.
That gives you an idea. It's a very short time. We're very, very similar to them. And of course,
blink of an eye when
we
you
can
talk
think
about
we're a
Earth.
lot smarter. What's that?
It's a blink of an eye when we're talking about Earth time, how old the planet is.
Right. That's
so,
right.
I mean,
It's a blink.
it was just yesterday in that grand scheme of things.
Right. It is. It's a short time. Well, anyway, I really don't know what teaching these animals sign language accomplishes. I mean, does it help us learn more about our language? I don't know. I don't think so.
Maybe they do it just because they can. Yeah, I mean, it's
they
that
do it
whole
because they can, and
arrogance thing.
Yeah, well, they're taught to do it. They're taught, and they're given a reward for doing it. They're not just going to. They're not going to go and sign if somebody isn't, pressing them to. And if they could sign, it wouldn't be something we would understand. So somebody taught them American Sign Language, And I don't know. I guess Coco is what's the name of the woman with Coco? I forget her name.
I don't remember either.
Well, but the Gardners had the Gardners from Reno, Nevada. They had like a divorce ranch where they bought an old divorce ranch, and they had it populated with chimpanzees that they were teaching American Sign Language to. And and this is like to teach to show that they had syntax and show that they that they could put together new words from the old signs, and they were doing this. And once in a while the chimps got out, and generally the chimps they had were young animals. Once they got old, they would take them away, ferret them away to some zoo or something like that. But they really didn't teach older animals. And older animals aren't as manageable. Once they start getting the hormones in them, chimps can be, quite a hassle. So they're generally like young animals, And one of the chimps, I guess, he got to be, a little bit older, and they hadn't taken him away, but he escaped. And there was, I guess, one of the casino owners' nephew, I guess John Escuega, the guy that owns the Golden Nugget in Reno.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was his niece. His niece was out jogging, and one of the escaped chimpanzees ran her down and bit her. Can you imagine the experience of being in Reno, Nevada, in some suburb of Reno, Nevada, and a chimpanzee runs you down and bites you?
Yeah, of all the
what
things.
do you think? I mean, what's the thoughts that come to your mind? I mean, first of all, you might not even know it's a chimp. I mean, you just think it's like this wild animal.
Yeah, that would be awful. That'd be a sight to see in Reno, Nevada. A chimp on the loose biting a jogger.
Biting
That'd
people.
be something else.
My friends worked at the. I had these two friends that worked at the divorce ranch with the chimpanzees and the language, and they used to take the chimps out for hikes, and the chimps were a little bit top heavy because of their center of gravity is a little above, and when it would climb mountains, it would sort of like it wouldn't be very stable. It was a small animal, and I guess they were climbing some it wasn't a difficult climb or anything like that, but the chimp fell like 10, 15 feet down to the ground in a thump, and they were scared shitless. They could, but the animal could be dead, because he was. I guess he passed out when he hit the ground, but he awoke and everything was fine.
They seem to be pretty durable creatures.
They're pretty durable creatures. Yes.
Say, one of the questions I get asked all the time is the smell that gorillas can produce.
Yeah, gorillas don't. It goes with them. The smell is with them. It's I don't know. I always say it's like a burnt tire smell.
Huh.
That's what it smells like. And then sometimes you get a whiff of it, and you could say like it's like a horse shit smell. Depends, but I think the burnt tire. Sometimes you can smell like it's sort of like a sweet like horse shit smell, but generally it's the burnt tire smell. It's the one that and it can be very strong. It can linger there even after the animal's gone.
So this is something they produce and can kind of spray?
No. It's something that's there with them. It's not. It's not something that they. No. It's
they
just
don't
there.
have no control.
They have no control. But we have. There's another character we share with chimps and gorillas uniquely. We have axillas. The armpit. And that actually is smelly, and we have all sorts of deodorant products. That to try to make it more. I guess palatable to our neighbors. But if we didn't bathe and stuff, it would get pretty stinky too on their armpits, right? And gorillas and chimps and us have axilla. That is, we have cells. We have cells are sebaceous. They secrete like a grease, a sebum, and that sebum gets decomposed by bacteria that live in that hair and on our skin, and that produces that smell.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. And if you ever thought about this, if the ancestor of humans, gorillas, and chimpanzees hung from their arms, they wouldn't have axillary organs under their armpits. What it does say is that their arms were always down at the sides. Because to keep that bacteria and the moisture necessary to have, those smell glands under your armpits, you would have to have them covered. You would have to have your arm above them. If they were up in the air, oddly enough, the orangutan, who's always hanging by his arms, doesn't have an axilla, an armpit. He actually, he doesn't have a gland, an axillary gland under his armpit. He has one like in his neck. It's called the sternal gland because it's like right where the neck meets the.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
The breastplate.
But what purpose do those glands even serve that we have in our armpits? So what's the reasoning behind them in nature?
The nature is it's an identifiable smell. So it's a smell that allows you to identify. So we have lots of ways to communicate. One of them is with our voice, with the sounds we make. The other is with the expressions that our face makes, even if we don't make sounds. And I can say yes or no by how I close my eyes or lift my eyebrows, right? Isn't that true?
Yep. Body language, yep.
And then the other part is actually smell. We can use smell to signal things. And we probably have pheromones in those smells that we actually react to. We really it's an area that we really don't know that much about.
Mm-hmm.
That means that when we produce a smell, we can get other people next to us to behave in a certain way, but we don't really know. It's just something we produce.
Yeah. Was that maybe a throwback to early human, though? I mean, was
it
that
is.
more
It
useful
obviously
then?
is, but everything we have has to be a throwback to early humans. Obviously, in modern civilization, we don't want we don't want females to smell us. But if I look at other cultures, in some cultures, the males are proud of the way they smell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they don't want to like perfume or bathe and get rid of their smell, because they say that's what women like. They want to know you're there, and I've heard people say that. I heard humans say that.
Interesting. I'll stop wearing deodorant around the wife and see if she likes that better.
See
or
if she
not.
likes it.
Joel, you can skip your Saturday night bath.
There it is. I can skip that now. I'm good.
Whether you need it or not, right?
Just skip it.
I'll do a bi-monthly rinse down.
Yeah, Esteban, it was only once a week anyhow. So
it's not gonna be.
Won't bother
you
me a
bathed, aren't
bit.
you bathed that many times? I keep mine down to once a month.
Well, I'm spoiled that way.
Anyway.
So let's talk about Bigfoot.
Okay.
Here you are, a primatologist, you're an anthropologist. Any chance in your brain that these things could be real?
Yeah, of course they could be real. I've talked about this many times. They have a distribution that suggests that they came from Asia. They have a North American distribution that suggests that they came from Asia through the Bering Strait. So is it a real animal or not? Well, if it isn't a real animal, it's a coincidence that they show this type of distribution. That is, people that see them or believe they see their footprints or believe they heard them or whatever, it shows a clear pattern, in northwest United States going into Alaska. And it is cited in Alaska. It's cited in Canada, and especially in that area between the Northwest and Alaska. So for this reason, its distribution isn't totally wacko, because we don't really have a lot of witness accounts of seeing Bigfoot in the Caribbean.
We don't have any.
And again, well, we don't have any. So this is the point, right? That if it was totally wacko, then people would say we've seen them in the Caribbean. But at least in some respects, it follows the distribution of an animal that crossed over with the Bering Strait. And we would expect an ape, because great apes, if it's closely related to humans, and to tell you the truth, I saw the film because you showed it to me, right, Doug?
Yeah.
The Patterson Gimlin film, right? And we see Patty, and Patty has hair, it has breasts, so it must be a mammal. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not a dinosaur. It has hair, it has breasts, it's a mammal. It has movements at its legs, at its thighs, at its knees and elbows and shoulders that are very, very human-like, and especially the movement of its neck. It's able in full stride to look back or look to the side. And that's very human-like thing to do. Chimps or gorillas can't do that. So if it is real, and it's not a man in a monkey suit, this animal had to come from Asia. It didn't cross in a canoe, because we don't know that it uses boats, and it didn't come in a jet plane. It had to come from Asia through the Bering Strait, and in that case, there's some credibility in these accounts of it being a real animal because of its distribution. That it's something that's possible.
One thing I find really interesting, I want to get your opinion on it, Esteban, is generally there's no fossil record of any modern deer, modern black bear. I mean, there's really no fossil record, but people will say, well, there's fossil record of Gigantopithecus in Asia. with the
Right.
jaw and the teeth.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting.
Well, it doesn't, not everything that dies gets fossilized.
No, of course not. But
Right. So when you see the fossil record, you're seeing it through, it's a prism that distorts, because not everything's getting fossilized. And so I'm sure someplace, I don't know a lot about black bears, and I don't know a lot about North American paleontology. I mean, I know a little bit. I don't know a lot, but I know, this happens with lots of animals. Lots of animals have no fossil record. And you can say gorillas and chimps have no fossils. There is no fossils of gorillas and chimps, at least nothing we recognize.
Right.
Now, if you ask me, I would say some of those Australopithecines are chimps and gorillas. That would be my opinion. We just can't tell them apart at that point because they're so closely related. I believe there's enough evidence. I'm writing a book on that now that will show that that's the case. But right now, people believe they're exclusively human. I let them believe that. But again, lots of animals we have no fossils for.
Yeah.
And that doesn't surprise me in the bit.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
isn't it
that
also where
someone
they
said-
die too? I mean, you gotta have
That's
the
right, it's
right
a place-
circumstances for a fossil to be
So-
made.
Right. Camels are an animal that lives, in pretty open areas, like in sand, desert, you would say. It does go once in a while, to drink water, but in generally it can be found in areas pretty far away from water. And when we look at its fossil record, it is pretty poor. We don't find, and we go to the areas where they're living, and we don't find a lot of remains of camel. They're found in the fossil record, but they're fairly rare. Warthogs, warthogs, right?
Yep.
We find that's another animal that's fairly rare in the fossil record. So, they're supposed to have been around, but, the fossil record is sort of, empty as far as they're concerned.
But we can find them readily. I mean, we can't find a Bigfoot.
That's right.
really-
But we haven't found Bigfoot, but then we have to put it in perspective because whoever took that film, Patterson Gimlin, supposedly they found Bigfoot, or at least they saw it. What we can't find is a body of Bigfoot. So people claim to have found evidence of Bigfoot and footprints and sightings. Right? They've actually people seen it. And like I always like to divide the Bigfoot people into believers and non-believers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have those people that believe it, and those people that say, no, this has to be a hoax. But it's very few people that actually say, well, we need more evidence to be sure of what it is, right? But that seems to be the more prudent thing, is to say, okay, it could exist, it might not exist, but with the evidence we have, we can't be sure.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's just it's too bad there's not more scientists willing to stick their neck out, try to get funding, and go out in the field and give it to
find
us.
it. I think I don't think you'll need a lot of funding to find it. If it's there, it's going to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe what we need is patience.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll find it, and it's something different than what we thought it was.
Yeah. Yep.
Very true. Very
There are no
true.
Bigfoot experts, that's for darn sure.
Right.
Well, unfortunately,
So-
we're running out of time, and it's been a fascinating discussion with you.
That went
And where
quick.
can people buy your books, and of course your web? Do you have a website, that kind of stuff? Like you
No,
mention all that.
I don't have like a website and stuff. But I mean, and I think the last book that was The Last Human. I think I wrote it like in 2007, 2008. It was a popular book. I haven't written. I've been working on this stuff now on the human fossils, human origin problem, and the some of the stuff we've been talking about with what Australopithecines these like Lucy are, and I've been working on a book on that now like for about 10 years, and every time I think I should be done, I just like add a little bit to it. And the reason, people say, well, you have to get done. Well, I do want to get done with it. But the reason is that there's so many misconceptions. And part of it, if it isn't that they weren't so closely related to us, these things could be easily handled. But because they are closely related, there's a lot of passion, that people have about it, and a lot of misconceptions, a lot of preconceptions that people have about it. That you have to be careful about how it's written and how it's explained. Or at least that's how I feel about it. I don't want to come off like a total nut. Like when I told you guys that humans probably got bipedal waiting. It sounds sort of far-fetched. It sounded to me far-fetched too when I first heard the idea.
Sure.
But when you start to look at it, it's not that far-fetched, and so it has to be explained well.
Well, everybody, this has been an interesting discussion with Dr. Esteban Sarmiento. I'm sorry about that.
Sarmiento.
There it is. I got her that second time around. And really, it's been very enlightening, and I learned quite a bit about our past as a species. So, everyone pick up your book and read more about it and do some research and really get into it, and you're going to see how closely we are related to the chimpanzee and the ape, and they are our cousins. They are us. So until next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other, and any closing words?
Well, one of the things that I always like to say is that when these animals diverge from each other, when we diverge from chimpanzees, that really didn't keep us from once in a while going back and forth and interbreeding with them. So even though we might say on average it might have happened 3 million years ago or 4 million years ago, we could have still been interbreeding with chimpanzees like up to 2 million years ago.
Wow,
so that's my parting words.
All right, guys, now, take care of each other.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
take
sir.
Care.
Signing off. Enjoy the rest of your evening and look that up.
After Hours AM is a production of Midwest Radio Productions.
Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And please visit www.americas-most-haunted.com.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free, upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now.